One day, everything changed as monsters arrived to our world from mysterious gates. At the same time, some individuals transcended humanity by gaining supernatural powers. They became known as hunters as they began to put their life on the line to repel the incoming monsters. The crowd began to grow worried as the gate of the dungeon said to be challenging for the best was still not closed. When suddenly a man pointed out someone exiting the gate, and so he came out. All began to cheer as the dungeon was getting closed. The hunter affirmed that he had successfully conquered the dungeon. This was none other than the legendary hunter Gwak Pilseong, who closed countless gates despite being over 60 years old. But suddenly, one day, this powerful hunter disappeared without leaving a trace, leaving only the tales of his prowess behind. A decade after the disappearance, the old man affirmed that he was the legendary hunter. Yet seeing how the young man didn't believe him left him particularly annoyed. The man then began to complain to his colleague, stating that this old man thinks he is Gwak Pilseong, affirming that this must be nonsense as there was no way a legendary hunter would be stuck in this nursing home, yet the friend stated that it was possible as they had the same name and age. With that, the both of them assumed that this old man must have been a comedian in his youth. They then began to talk about how they wouldn't have taken this job if they were hunters, and that they should get a drink later. Just then, one of them noticed an exhausted man. He quickly rushed to check on him, but was then left baffled as a giant ant suddenly appeared in the room. As it gripped the man's neck, he began to beg for rescue, only for him to have his head chopped off by the giant insect. The nurse was terrified as he watched this atrocity in horror. The ant then decided to kill another man. But just then, the armed one jumped into the air and stabbed the vile beast in its head, leaving the man utterly shocked. He was even more surprised when his savior turned out to be Gwak Pilseong, who asked him to quickly escape. The legendary hunter then asked the nurse to evacuate everyone as the ants were many, leaving him concerned for his safety as he was about to face the monsters alone. Gwak Pilseong reassured him by stating that he won't do anything past his limits. With that, the mocking nurse was certain that this was the true Gwak Pilseong and wondered about the reason behind his presence in a nursing home. As the sun began to set, the giant insects kept on emerging from the portal. Gwak Pilseong watched in silence, wondering how the specified association missed the appearance of this gate, when suddenly one of the monsters noticed him and let out a loud scream in order to alert the others. Having been discovered, the old one decided to take action, and so Gwak Pilseong charged at the ants from up above, stabbing the first one in its head. He then noticed another one trying to bite him from behind, and so he quickly dodged the jaws of death. This left Gwak Pilseong annoyed by the insects, and so our hero took down 4 ants with a single slash of his kitchen knife. With that, Gwak Pilseong stood alone between the giant beast's corpses. Seeing how exhausted he was after killing some ants made the man realize that he was truly getting old and made him wish to be younger. But as it wiggled, the old man noticed, as a giant praying mantis appeared right behind him. With that, the terrified leader asked the insect if it was the boss of the insects, but the senseless beast didn't respond, as it attacked the old man, slamming him into a giant rock. This seemed like a tough adversary. Seeing how Gwak Pilseong was unable to move, the mantis readied itself to dive its teeth deep in his flesh. But just as it was about to take the first bite, the old man opened his eyes and affirmed that the monster's mouth was revolting. With that, the hero stabbed the mantis' head. Now in pain, the insect tried to shake Gwak Pilseong from its head by slamming him into the nearby trees, and when it stopped moving, the hero assumed it was unable to fight any longer. And so Gwak Pilseong gathered his last strength in order to finish it off. Just like that, the giant praying mantis had been slain, finally collapsing to the ground. The hunter was happy to see that his skills weren't completely dulled as he began coughing. The exhausted old man then collapsed on the ground. Gwak Pilseong realized that his body couldn't take it any longer. Thinking of how the bugs would have been easier to deal with 10 years ago, the hero found it amusing that he would die in agony like a true hunter. But just then, a notification caught him off guard as it congratulated him on conquering this dungeon, and he was then left intrigued as the system stated it would fulfill his wish for clearing it. Gwak Pilseong received the god's blessing that would grant him eternal life. With that, his body began to change. As the gate began closing, a crowd of people who noticed him rushed to his aid. Later on, the old one woke up to a lady calling him. The confused Gwak Pilseong asked about his whereabouts. The woman, who turned out to be a nurse, explained that he was transferred to this hospital in the capital after being found almost dead in front of the closing gate. After being asked to identify himself, the old one gave his name and year of birth. The year of birth shocked the lady. This annoyed our hero, who, despite his youthful looks, affirmed that he was 83 years old. After hearing this, the nurse was unable to believe that this young-looking man was an old man, which he confirmed annoyed once again. Gwak Pilseong assumed that her reaction was due to him naturally looking like someone in his 70s, but in reality, he looked like someone in his 20s. But just then, he noticed. Gwak Pilseong laid his eyes on his own reflection, before rushing to the mirror, shocked by his new appearance. This odd behavior made the nurse assume that the patient's injuries had caused him brain damage, and so she went to fetch a doctor as he was still under the shock. Just then, Gwak Pilseong remembered what had happened before he lost consciousness, seeing how this wasn't a hallucination. The old man recalled how some obtained new skills after clearing a dungeon, yet he had never heard of blessings. It was even more odd that this blessing restored his lost youth. After taking some time to think, Gwak Pilseong decided to search for help instead of staying in the hospital. And when the nurse came back, the young one was nowhere to be seen. Gwak Pilseong was now in front of a tall skyscraper. He recalled how he hadn't set foot in the association for 10 years. Upon entering the building, the legendary hunter noticed that the place was completely different. Gwak Pilseong then asked someone for help as he had something to settle with the association. So the stranger pointed him to a strange kiosk and affirmed that he would have to grab a ticket in order to get a turn. But the 83-year-old man struggled to maneuver such machinery, leading to an annoyed line forming right behind him. Just then, a hand was placed on his shoulder. A tall man menacingly asked the hero to give him his turn as he had no time to waste. Some of the present hunters recognized this one as the C-rank troublemaker of Medusik. To everyone's surprise, the young-looking one began to scold the man, stating that he should wait in line like everyone else. With that, the annoyed man grabbed the protagonist by his shirt, when suddenly, a tall, imposing presence interrupted them, affirming that combat was forbidden inside the association. Some people were left amazed, having recognized him as an S-rank hunter named Park Seok-chien, and others were seeing their first S-rank ever. The tall man was annoyed with the association, seeing how it was using someone of his rank to keep order. The crowd then began to whisper about his impressive height and how he seemed the pinnacle of masculinity, and despite not wanting to be flattered, this one adored being called manly. Just then, Gwak Pilseong affirmed that the S-rank hunter didn't seem like a stranger. After thinking for some time, the hero recognized the tall hunter as Park Dabin, leaving him shocked. Being called by that name shocked the terrified hunter. The present hunters began to gossip about the S-rank being called Park Dabin. Gwak Pilseong then began to talk about how the two of them hadn't met in a long time and how old he looked now. The S-rank hunter began to shiver in frustration upon hearing the crowd gossiping about this name. In reality, after becoming an S-rank hunter 10 years ago, Dabin decided to adopt a more serious name, thus going by Park Seok-chien. The tall one was left annoyed after being called by his true name by this young man, and just as the hero was about to ask this acquaintance for a favor, he was suddenly grabbed by the collar, as Park Dabin ordered him to identify himself. But instead of obeying, Gwak Pilseong pointed out how the hunter had lost his delicacy, before reminding him that they couldn't fight inside the building in front of the giant crowd. After apologizing for his sudden outburst, Park Dabin proposed to move on to a more suitable location, before warning our hero to not even think about escaping as rage filled his eyes, creeping out the protagonist. After entering a vast empty space, Gwak Pilseong asked about this place, so the S-rank explained that this was a sparring area for hunters, before asking our hero to identify himself and reveal where he learned his real name from. So the young-looking one presented himself as the legendary hunter before claiming that a recent incident made him regain his youth. Yet the tall one wasn't convinced and assumed that this young man was mocking him. After affirming that he gave him a chance and concentrating mana into his own fist, Park Dabin decided to uncover the truth by beating it out of the protagonist, only for Gwak Pilseong to dodge the punch and call him out for being a hothead at this age. This swiftness left the S-rank hunter utterly shocked. The old man explained to the younger one that one should let go of his temper as he gets old. Park Dabin then affirmed that simply looking at his opponent made him more eager to uncover his real name as he decided to get serious. With that, the S-rank hunter turned himself into a monster after activating the skill Beast that turned him into a werewolf. The monster affirmed that he was done holding back, before charging our hero and daring him to dodge his attacks once again. Gwak Pilseong had no choice but to block the incoming strike, leaving him impressed by this new strength. He then suddenly felt alerted as the werewolf claimed that his next move would hurt. Park Dabin then slashed the air with his claws, hitting our hero in multiple spots, sending him flying into the air, before slamming him into a wall. Seeing this, the satisfied S-rank hunter realized that he might have been carried away. But to his surprise, our smiling hero affirmed that this conflict couldn't be ended peacefully anymore. And so after firmly planting his foot into the ground, the legendary hunter charged at the monster, who was unable to believe that his S-rank strength couldn't even scratch the young-looking man. Gwak Pilseong then claimed that his punch might pack a bit of a sting, before smacking the hunter in the jaw, knocking him into the air, before finally falling down. After some time passed, the werewolf still hadn't moved. This made our protagonist grow anxious, speculating that he might have killed him by mistake. While in his 20s, the young Park Dabin assumed that hunters were just overpowered barbarians deprived of beauty, as he recalled our old protagonist, checking on him while sitting on a pile of giant dead monsters. This left Dabin amazed, as meeting this one made the young one have a realization regarding his master's majestic power, describing it as something of splendid beauty. Just then, the unconscious man began to wake up. Upon opening his eyes, the S-rank hunter began to see the old one's true face. This startled him, only to find himself in front of the young-looking man who was glad to see him breathing. Gwak Pilseong then began to scold the defeated hunter for attacking him like that, affirming that he had taught him better. With that, Park Dabin finally realized that the one in front of him was truly the legendary hunter, who was left irritated. Shortly after, our hero successfully finished summarizing the incident that led him to this state to the hunter, who seemed intrigued by the blessing. According to Dabin, blessings are abilities that stay active unlike skills. Gwak Pilseong, who isn't familiar with blessings, pointed out how Dabin doesn't seem to have a deep knowledge of them either. This made the tall hunter apologize for not being able to assist the old man. Gwak Pilseong had to ask Park Dabin to put a shirt on while watching him adore his own body and claim that he lost his clothes after transforming. The old man told the younger one not to give his situation much thought, as this gate-filled world had truly become odd and that the only thing that mattered was him regaining his youth. The overjoyed S-Rank proposed to Gwak Pilseong to return to the association, as many would be delighted by his return. But as the old one called him, the atmosphere suddenly changed. Park Dabin was surprised to learn that Gwak Pilseong wanted to keep his return a secret. Before asking him if he was aware of the reason behind his sudden retirement, the S-Rank was left shocked when the master asked if he recalled the names Taeyong, Byamsik, and Jiyoon. With a saddened expression, the tall one affirmed that he would forever remember them. Gwak Pilseong recalled how they gave away their lives in order to let him survive numerous dungeons. Park Dabin firmly affirmed that he would have also done the same, seeing how precious the old man was to them. But was then shocked when the hero affirmed that this dedication was the main reason behind his retirement. The protagonist explained that he became too idolized by those around him at one point, feeling guilty as he saw young souls sacrifice themselves to save his old bones. Gwak Pilseong feared reliving this pain upon making his return public, as he was unable to witness young sprouts wither for him once again. After hearing and understanding this philosophy, the S-Rank hunter decided to keep the old man's return a secret, as he wished. When asked about his next step, the old man affirmed that he was still thinking about it. So Park Dabin revealed that he wanted to ask a favor from him. Later on, in a green forest, Gwak Pilseong recalled how the color green indicated a D-rank hunter. This technique pleased him, as it made it easy to assert one's rank. With that, he began to recall how he was intrigued by Park Dabin, asking him to investigate while partaking in a D-rank raid. The S-rank hunter, who revealed that an ongoing investigation was making him worry, stated that the hunter's presence would greatly calm him despite not being able to reveal the details. Gwak Pilseong accepted to help, as the tall one affirmed that he wanted to use his immense power in case things went south. But just as he began to wonder about the situation that might require his powers, a rude person bumped into him. The thug's friend was then triggered when the young-looking man affirmed that one should apologize in such cases, before flexing his friend's power, stating he was almost C-rank, and that the new D-ranks like our hero should fear him. The thug was no other than the former D-rank hunter Wang Scorpion, chief of the Scorpion Gang, who stated that our green-looking hero should run away while he still could. The three of them then continued on their way, laughing at the annoyed old man. Encountering these three insolent hunters made Gwak Pilseong think of how there will always be those who judge people based on a first glance. When suddenly, a calm-looking man asked him not to give the thugs any thought, as they were known for harassing newcomers. Our old protagonist was then left shocked when the man named Kim Cheolman asked him for his name, assuming him to be a student. Upon learning the young-looking one's name, the man pointed out how he must be named after the legendary hunter. Kim Cheolman then asked our hero for his age, so he revealed to be 80 years old. But after realizing his slip-up, Gwak Pilseong claimed to be approaching 18 years old. This excited the man, as the protagonist had the same age as his son, and he assumed that raids must be quite profitable for young ones to partake in them. As Kim Cheolman began to talk about his son who spends his time playing video games, the old hero found it ironic that if he had a child back then, he would be as old as him. Just then, the both of them were approached by an extrovert and her introverted friend. The one with orange hair introduced herself as the 24-year-old hunter Park Ji-hun and her Shay friend as Lee Yoonji. She then approached our hero, picking up his curiosity, before kissing him on the cheek, and affirming to the startled, blushing old man that this was her way of greeting people. Just then, the middle-aged man called out to our hero, affirming that youth feels great, which our hero found ironic as he was old enough to be the girl's grandfather. When suddenly, another voice calling his name caught his attention. It turned out to be a smiling man in a suit armed with a katana, and when asked about his name, the man introduced himself as the one in charge of this raid, the C-rank hunter Kim Taejin. With that, the presentations were made. Kim Taejin then asked our hero if he was someone close to the S-rank hunter, as he doesn't usually recommend hunters. Gwak Pilseong claimed to be a distant relative of Park Dabin. With that, the C-rank hunter ordered those under him to regroup, as he would be giving a summary before entering the dungeon. Kim Taejin presented himself to the men as the leader of this expedition, before stating that most of them were D-rank newcomers, and that he believed their class of hunters had great potential for growth. The C-rank hunter even revealed that he was aware that some of them would soon join him in his rank, and explained that despite not being lethal, D-rank dungeons were hard to foresee, which is why he affirmed that all must obey him in order to ensure a fruitful raid. One of the thugs stated that this was exaggeration as this was a mere D-rank dungeon, making the old man scold him by pointing out that preparation was the key to success, which angered the redhead, when suddenly someone stopped them. Wong Scorpion affirmed that they should go easy on our hero as he had no experience regarding dungeons, and that more experienced hunters should be able to assert the danger. This made the thug and his minion look like buffoons in the eyes of the legendary hunter. With that, the summary came to an end. It was now time for the party to cross the gate. The sun was shining brightly. The magical gate was the entrance of this D-rank dungeon, and upon entering it, our hero and his allies found themselves in what seemed like a desert, and while Hunter Park joked about regretting not bringing sunscreen, Wong Scorpion affirmed that he wanted to end this as fast as possible in order to enjoy a refreshing drink. Gwak Pilseong began to take off his jacket upon entering the annoying desert. The party leader affirmed that they would commence once everyone was inside. Our hero noticed the Scorpion gang casually making plans for when the raid was over, making him scold them for their reckless behavior. This made him recall a scene from his past, where a young Park Dabin was exhausted. The young man affirmed that the raid was more challenging than expected, having anticipated an easy one due to the small size of the gate. So the old man affirmed that they should always be on their guard when raiding for this exact reason. Gwak Pilseong, sitting on the slain boss, then affirmed to the young one that he should always obey him, which he promises to do. Back to the present, a hero recalled how everyone used to be anxious when it came to dungeons, as they only assessed their difficulty based on how big the entrance was. Yet now, as it was easy to assert the exact difficulty of the dungeon, the hunters seemed more laid back. Seeing how the world had turned out, the hero decided to ask the C-rank something which piqued his interest. Gwak Pilseong asked about the difficulty of this class of dungeons, making the man assume that this was the first dungeon he had entered. The party leader explained that D-rank dungeons were perfect for D-rank hunters, before reassuring him that C-rank hunters like him are always present in case of problems. This made the legendary hero point out that they seemed to have everything planned out. The party leader was taken by surprise when the young-looking man asked him about a scenario where the dungeon was underestimated. Just then, Wong Scorpion addressed the two of them, and affirmed to our hero that no one would blame him for running away, seeing how scared he seemed. One of his thugs mockingly asked him not to put too much pressure on the newcomer. The C-rank hunter reassured our hero once again that they were perfectly safe, as the danger was already asserted with a specific meter by the association, what you structure is safe raid. Yet our hero was still not convinced, making the man add how the dungeon meter had been in use for half a decade now, and how it never falsely measured the true difficulty of any dungeon. Gwak Pilseong asked if this was true, which the man confirmed, while the soon-to-be C-rank began to complain about how annoying beginners were. With that, the old man began to scold the hothead. The angered Scorpion boss grabbed our hero by the shirt and dared him to talk back one more time. The protagonist advised him to always be discreet while raiding. With that, the man let out a loud laugh, before pointing out how newbies should be terrified in their first raid, assuming that this was the case of our hero. Gwak Pilseong then asked him if he was aware of the reason behind his advice, when suddenly the party was spotted by a giant purple serpent. The monster's arrival startled the hunters. Scorpion was left terrified. With that, the monster prepared itself, before charging at him. But just then, and with a swift slash, the hero decapitated the monster with a single strike, quickly putting an end to its misery. This left the soon-to-be C-rank hunter baffled, as it all happened at an incredible speed. With that, Gwak Pilseong affirmed to the man that he should take his advice, as loud hunters will always be the favored targets of the monsters. As the protagonist walked away, the man grew frustrated, unable to accept that he was getting corrected by a young man. The concerned hunter then turned to the party leader and asked him if the snake was truly a D-rank, seeing how she had never seen a monster this powerful. The man found it odd, as D-ranks were usually giant dogs or insects, and seeing how this purple worm was most definitely a C-rank, the leader began to grow worried. Meanwhile, in another location inside the desert dungeon, the young one asked Gilwoo about their next course of action. He reassured his friends, stating that patience was the only way to salvation. The girl proposed to ask the grown-ups for help, but after thinking about it, Gilwoo refused, seeing how lethal this dungeon was and how the adults weren't trustworthy. As the both of them kept on arguing, a purple presence heard them. The young hunters then heard a creepy scream, and were left startled as they were found by a giant snake. As the beast locked on its prey, both of them were filled with fear and horror, letting out a loud scream as they were now under a hungry monster's mercy. Meanwhile, our hero began to walk in the scorching desert. The party leader who was leading the way seemed anxious and deeply plunged into his own thoughts, as he recalled how the girl described the monster as something above D-rank. Despite his best efforts, the man had a hard time relaxing as the serpent looked like a C-rank monster. Before turning to look at our hero, the man began to think of how the dungeon was surely not above D-grade, as a young man on his first raid defeated it with one slash. Yet then again, there was still a possibility of the dungeon being wrongly labeled. But the man quickly denied the idea, as the meter had never been wrong before. Wong Scorpion, who was covered in sweat, began to grunt, He then burst out and complained to the leader that they walked for half an hour before asking how long until they take a break. Seeing how all seem exhausted, the team leader decided to grant Wang Scorpion his wish. This left the old man disappointed, seeing how the younglings were exhausted by a mere 30-minute walk session. Just then, the Scorpion boss noticed some sort of fog rising, when suddenly the hunter noticed a giant purple snake standing above their heads. Seeing how this serpent seemed more powerful than the first one, the scared party leader asked the men to prepare for battle, speculating it to be the boss. The monster then began to approach the hunters. After taking a look at our hero, the soon-to-be C-rank unsheathed his axe as he recalled how the protagonist put him to shame earlier. To the leader's surprise, Wang Scorpion charged headfirst, affirming that he could kill this snake on his own. The C-rank tried to warn him about the danger, but Wang Scorpion told the others to admire him as he kills the boss. With that, he rushed to the monster, ready to take its life. But upon striking it, Wang Scorpion was baffled upon witnessing how insignificant his strike was against the serpent. Gwak Pilseong found the idea of attacking a defending monster utterly pathetic, making him realize how pitiful these hunters' thinking process was. With that, the snake prepared itself to counterattack. Upon seeing this, the man assumed himself to have met his doom. But just as the monster launched its attack, Wang Scorpion found himself being saved by the party leader, who quickly checked up on him. The party leader was relieved to see his party member not injured. With that, he asked his men to stand down, seeing how this powerful monster was his sole responsibility, considering that he was the only present C-rank. With that, the man in the suit charged at the beast, jumped into the air, and struck it with his katana, but was then left shocked to see that his sword was as ineffective as Wang Scorpion's axe, when suddenly someone screamed to him to target the serpent's head. This left the hunter intrigued, but upon locating the designated spot, the man used the monster's body as a trampoline in order to jump into the air and gain some altitude, as he was determined to slay it. With that, the party leader was finally able to decapitate the monster with a single slash. And just like that, the giant snake was defeated, leaving everyone relieved and overjoyed. Gwak Pilseong then approached the victor in order to check up on him, so the man affirmed being unharmed. The party leader then gave credit to the young-looking one for this victory over the boss, as due to him he was able to survive the serpent and slay it with ease. Hunter Park then asked if this marked the end of the raid, which the party leader assumed it to be. But as worry filled her eyes, the girl pointed out how nothing unusual was happening. This made the party leader realize how odd it is, seeing how they should be getting a notification upon killing the boss. But just then, the man realized in panic, as two more purple atrocities appeared from behind the rocks, that against all sense of logic, as this was a D-rank dungeon, the monster that he, who was a C-rank, barely defeated wasn't even the boss. Just then, our hero affirmed that the explanation was obvious, pointing out how this dungeon was far above D-rank, while the party leader was still in denial about the association miscalculating the dungeon's lethality. As he and his men were getting ready for the upcoming battle, the C-rank hunter was left unable to comprehend the odd situation. The middle-aged man then informed the party leader that they had monsters on their six. With that, Kim finally accepted the fact that this dungeon was far above D-rank, and so he ordered the men to flee the scene, thinking of how many risk getting killed, which is why they should escape and get reinforcements. After looking at the man, a smile appeared on Gwak Pilseong's face, seeing how responsible this young hunter was. Later on, as they kept on walking, Wang Scorpion found himself out of breath, and so he began to scream at the team leader and called him out for escaping a D-rank dungeon despite his rank. The suited man affirmed to the thug that this dungeon was far above D-rank. Yet the Scorpion boss couldn't believe it, seeing this dungeon had already been labeled D-rank and how our hero easily killed one of its monsters. This made Gwak Pilseong scold the thug for being too loud once again, so the angry man affirmed that he wasn't scared of the snakes and that he had just been caught by surprise earlier. Just then, a creepy sound from a nearby cave startled him. All felt alerted, expecting a monster to come out of the darkness, only for the so-called monster to be a human asking for help. The girl, who looked in bad shape, was desperate for help. Hunter Park rushed to check on her. The girl then begged the hunters to rescue her friend, leaving the one holding her confused. This young one explained how she and her friend were ambushed by a giant serpent, and that he got harmed while protecting her, while the team leader wondered about the reason behind a child's presence inside a dungeon, and so he demanded an explanation, seeing how she wasn't a hunter. The girl explained how someone offered them a lucrative part-time job where their main task would be to conceal their presence inside the dungeon. Just then, Scorpion Wang butted in, as he recognized the girl and her friend as infamous tomb raiders, leaving the female hunter confused. This term also intrigued our hero, so the C-rank explained how it refers to individuals that illegally enter dungeons in order to snatch some of its rewards when conquered. Seeing how younglings were putting their lives on the line inside dungeons, the old protagonist was left baffled. With that, the thug accused the children of disturbing the dungeon, implying that it was their fault that such powerful monsters appeared in this D-rank dungeon. The leader affirmed that these were two separate problems, yet the man insisted that they were the cause of the anomalies. When asked about the fate of the tomb raiders, a C-rank hunter affirmed that they should save them at any cost. This angered the Scorpion boss as he affirmed that they shouldn't rescue the children when their own lives were at stake. But before the leader could respond, Gwak Pilseong proposed to aid the Tomb Raiders, making the one in the suit affirm that the risks were too high. Yet seeing how they couldn't leave them behind, the hero proposed to go alone in order to appease the scared hunter. Wang Scorpion affirmed that he won't oppose his choice to freely walk to his end. With that, the young-looking one instructed the leader to evacuate the dungeon while he saved the children. Seeing how Gwak Pilseong demonstrated advanced skills and even located the snake's weak point, the team leader decided to have faith in him. With that, the leader decided to follow the hero's will. Gwak Pilseong then stated that he would carry the injured one. The girl then turned to him and asked with a worried expression if he would truly help. So with a reassuring smile, he affirmed that he would rescue both of them. And so the team leader ordered the men to hit the road. While leaving, the Scorpion gang began to mock our hero for throwing himself into danger. Yet the girl didn't seem to share this feeling, as she was in fact worried that he might get hurt, despite considering it an idiotic game of chance. The team leader had no choice but to comply, seeing how their choices were tightly limited. Shortly after, inside the cave where the injured one was hiding, he began to think of his employers, who lied to them yet blamed himself for trusting the grown-ups. Back then, the man affirmed that his offer was too lucrative, as all they had to do was hide inside a low-risk dungeon and wait for it to be cleared in order to snatch the rewards, yet the young one was still not convinced. The man even affirmed that since they were mere students, no one would arrest them but instead give them a light warning. Upon hearing that this was his golden chance, the young man finally agreed. Back to the present, the injured one was worried about his friend Yun-Soo, when suddenly, he noticed something approaching. The terrified boy quickly grabbed a branch, but as he expected the worst, but one arriving turned out to be human. Gilwoo was finally reunited with Eun-Soo. The boy was then intrigued when a mysterious individual entered the cave. The girl presented our hero as the hunter that came to aid them, but Gilwoo had a hard time believing it as he looked too young to be one. This triggered the old man, who slapped the boy on the head. Gwak Pilseong affirmed to the insolent one that a child's place was at home studying, not inside a dangerous dungeon scavenging. Eun-Soo revealed to him to flood her home, which is why she took this job, as she was desperate for money and shelter. The old man was angered by the actions of the employers, seeing how they risk mere children for an easy profit. With that, Gwak Pilseong proposed to the Tomb Raiders to catch up with his group. But just then, a giant purple snake entered the cave and found them. This left the children terrified. The boy was certain that they were able to shake it off, and seeing how he was too injured to escape, he urged the two of them to flee without him, yet Eun-Soo refused to leave him. So Gwak Pilseong affirmed that he wouldn't be abandoning anyone. The boy urged our hero to escape with his friend, making the old man point out his boldness despite his young age. Gwak Pilseong affirmed that it was the adult's responsibility to take care of the children, which is why he affirmed that he shall leave none behind as he charged at the giant monster while the children watched in astonishment. Meanwhile, back at the fleeing party, the thug began to complain about how they were trapped in a dungeon where they weren't even able to fight. The team leader reassured the man by informing them that the exit was right ahead. He then began to think of Gwak Pilseong, who might struggle to save the children. This doubt made him question his own decision to trust our hero. Kim Cheolman then began to search the area for the gate, when suddenly, he noticed something surprising. So he quickly called the team leader, as this matter had to do with the gate. The exit was disappearing from the dungeon, leaving the hunters utterly shocked. Upon seeing this, Wang Scorpion demanded a plan from the party leader. Kim Taejin began to think of how the dungeon's entrance appeared 3 days ago, and that its disappearance was a sign that the dungeon would soon malfunction. Yet seeing how it takes about 7 days for it to happen, the man assumed that they should be good for now. With that, the party leader began to think that the Tomb Raiders were truly the reason behind these odd events, when he was suddenly snapped back to reality by his party members asking him for a plan. So Kim Taejin reassured the men by explaining that the exit would reappear upon closing the dungeon, which the Scorpion boss found ridiculous, as there was no way for D-rank hunters to clear a dungeon that far surpasses their rank. With that, Kim Cheolman realized that failure meant being stuck forever in this dungeon. The party leader then explained that the gate would also open when the dungeon closed, which was a risky plan but possibly their only way to survive, before suggesting to cool off and calmly assess the situation. Just then, the thug noticed something. The hunters found themselves being surrounded by the giant serpents, which left them horrified. As the first one charged at them, the party leader ordered the men to ready themselves. Kim Taejin had counted 5 opponents, so he theorized that even D ranks could clear them with a solid plan while targeting the monsters' heads. With that, the party leader asked the team to help him, while Scorpion Wang began to fear the worst. With that, Kim Taejin charged at the giant beasts, and so he jumped at the first one and decapitated it with one swing of his blade, when suddenly he was attacked by the second snake, leaving him no choice but to try and block the attack. Just then, a hunter decided to aid him by throwing a fire spell at the monster that even he had to dodge. Yet this attack only angered the beast, who turned to the mage. So the swordsman affirmed to the creature that this fight was between them, before taking its head. With that, the second snake was defeated. Kim Taejin counted 3 remaining serpents, And despite how challenging this task seemed, he was certain that it was possible. Wang Scorpion felt relieved as these monsters weren't as strong as they appeared. But just then, he noticed a giant three-headed purple snake standing right behind him. The party was left horrified as they speculated that this was the final monster, while the team leader related its shocking arrival to the anomalies occurring. With that, the great beast attacked the hunters with its powerful tail. The Scorpion boss found himself in front of the monster as his gang members begged him for help, but in the end, the thug chose to run away and leave his friend behind. Just then, the betrayed one noticed the monster getting closer, but before it could devour him, it was mysteriously shot by a projectile, by none other than Hunter Park. With that, the girl found herself being the target of the dungeon's boss, but in fact, she deliberately played the bait to give the C-rank hunter an opening. Kim Taejin was able to score a clean hit, feeling optimistic that only 2 heads remained, but just then, something intriguing happened. The freshly inflicted wound on the monster quickly closed. To the man's surprise, a new head was just created. With that, the monster was back at full strength. This made Kim Taejin speculate that this one's weak spot wasn't its head. He was then caught off guard by the tri-headed snake's powerful tail, slamming him into the wall and making him cough blood. The markswoman was shocked to see the C-rank hunter down, when fear suddenly filled her eyes as the boss monster began to target her, causing her to scream in panic. But just as she was about to be devoured, someone grabbed onto her and took her out of harm's way. The savior then began to run away while carrying Hunter Park. As he checked up on her, the young lady began to blush at the sight of her savior. After finally arriving to the scene, Gwak Pilseong asked his hard-working allies to let him deal with the 3-headed atrocity.